all obfuscated, and I wasn't trying to like reverse engineering what they had over there. So that was a problem. Unless you were going to spend quite some time trying to figure out how to de-obfuscate the results. It wasn't that easy. Then there are other sites that require like a kind of require you to have some kind of like state in order to be able to do queries, which is not bad. I mean, once you figure, it's not that bad. You first request like you first visit the site. There's some sort of cookie in the in the page, and in order to actually do like a query, you have to submit that cookie that they have. It's like you have to visit the page beforehand. I mean, that's easy once you figure out what the cookie is, so it's not bad. And the other one, which is not mutually exclusive with the other, with the other two, is that many of these search engines, they try to do a good job at detecting whether you are a robot or whether you are trying to scrap the results, okay? As an example, if you try to get results with something like curl or wget, usually you get nothing. Because they don't like the user agent, and they think that if you are accessing the search engine with that kind of like application, well, that's not the kind of visitor that they want. Okay. So I'm going to discuss a bit of these ones. Okay. So first one, I essentially avoided it. So I said, well, let's try to find if there is one that is not hard, and if there's not, well, we will come back here. We didn't have to do it. This third one was kind of like easy. I mean, just get a list of strings of popular user agents. So you have like wget or curl to just spoof the user agent, and that's okay. And also you can change it all the time so that it pretends that it's like different browsers. And this one, not bad. So let's see at what we came up with. So. What's the one that I got to work? Well, Bing. I had never used before, but when I was researching what search engines were there, and well, I came up with this one, which apparently is popular. And it's funny because I read a little bit about the history of this one. At some point, they were scrapping the results of Google, and they had issues with Google now. So for me, it was like relieving, so I could scrap the results now, because they had already stolen from Google, so we could now do some justice in here. Well, the good thing about Bing is that it doesn't do anything of the stuff that I mentioned before. So you just request the web page, you get just plain HTML. The page is not obfuscated. What else? It doesn't require any cookie, and you can request as many pages as you want, and you never get banned. Okay? Well, so far, to be honest, before including this here, I say, well, this is the stuff that usually you don't want to tell, because if people, use it a lot, it's going to be gone. But well, so far it's working. So the idea is that, I mean, I don't have my laptop in here, but if you use the toolkit that is, you can download it with Git, there's this specific command which is get Bing, and whatever you specify after this is the domain name that you want to request name record for, okay? So what the tool is doing here when you execute it like this is essentially just, run a search using the keyword site and this stuff in here. Obviously, it scraps the results from the web page and it outputs the results. Okay. There are a few, let's say, tricks, in the, running in the tool. Like, for example, if you just specify this, you might get a lot of the same results, right? Because you are just specifying the site and you want to, differentiate from one page to another. So, for example, one thing that this tool does is like submitting like keywords, different keywords, to try to change the results from the search engine, to try to get different results. Or for example, if you get some specific site, like you query for example, for this domain name, and you get some domain name, now we redo the query, but explicitly excluding what we already got from the results, okay? The idea is obviously that, we want to, obtain different results as opposed to go through many different pages that all contain the same name. So this one actually works quite well. And I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to get like, the whole zone data for like a site. But for example, you can get this tool running for, let's say, about a day, and you might get something between 60,000, 100,000 top-level domains from some country, for example. So I was building like my own zone files, obviously very reduced scale, but at least having something like 50,000, 100,000 DNS names that I didn't have before. Okay. Again, you don't get banned with this. So that's a good thing. You can keep this tool running even with different queries at the same time, and it's okay. Then there is this other search engine that I didn't even know it existed, but obviously the thing here was that I couldn't use Google because I didn't want to spend time figuring out what the JavaScript was about. So Bing worked, and I wanted to try something else. I came up with this one. I had never used it in my life. I had the idea that on the background they use services from Google, so it's not that they have their own engine. So what are the characteristics of this search engine? The results are good. So if you search for some domain name, you can expect to get similar results as the results that you get with Bing or with Google. It doesn't obfuscate the the HTML, so it's easy to actually scrap the page. The only problem is that they do ban you when you do many queries. And they are kind of like aggressive. I mean, I think that at least I was banned for like, you try the tool for, like half hour, and they might ban you for more than a day. Okay? So it's like the extent to which you can use this command, which is, implemented, is, well, for, if you are doing a pen test of a specific site, that's okay. But most likely you are not going to be able to use this if you want to build the all the zone data for a specific zone, because you cannot perform as many queries. And again, you're going to be banned. So you use it, they detect that you are scrapping the results, and for a couple of days, you're not going to be able to do anything with this. Other stuff that was that turned out to be needed. I was mentioning that we already have this tool, Address6, which essentially allows you to do virtually everything or virtually anything that you can do in addresses. For example, you can analyze patterns of addresses, you can filter addresses, you can have like a whole file with addresses of different kinds, and you can ask the tool to filter addresses based on prefixes, scopes, and other things. But there were some more features that were needed. For example, think about for a second about the way in which you can print or represent addresses. First of all, you have what we call the canonic format, or I don't even know if it's called the canonic format, but it's the more compact format in which you can represent an IPv6 address. Okay. That's what we normally do, or what we normally use for everything, when you are, logging an address, when you are entering an address, and so on. But it turns out that for other stuff, like when you are scripting, doing scripts, it's actually very painful, because if you want to, for example, analyze an address as a piece of text, as opposed to, in binary format, that compressed format obviously makes it very painful. So what you want to have is, an address that, is always the same fixed length without any compression at all. This was something that was required, but you might have read his paper. David Plonka, he did analysis on, patterns of addresses. And originally he had implemented, this feature himself in the tool, so now I incorporated it. So if you are, analyzing addresses as, strings as opposed in their binary format, normally what you want is to have the addresses in this way. Not the compressed format, but, the long format. You want all the zeros, you want everything in there. It's easier to, do everything that way. So this is something that is implemented too. There's another thing that, came up while I was trying to do this, this thing of, finding a lot of sites, if you want, on the IPv6 internet. So you might remember that we have the DNS reverse enumeration, in which basically you start with some prefix, okay? And, based on that prefix, you walk the, the reverse DNS tree to find, names and to find addresses, okay? Now, what I wanted to do is to be able to automate all this so that if I was somehow discovering addresses, I could, come up with the corresponding prefixes and use those prefixes for reverse enumeration. So this is what this tool in here does, address 6 over there. Essentially, you give the tool an address, you specify the length of a prefix, and it just sanitizes the prefix, the low order bits, and it gives you a string that is a prefix, okay? That's simple. It's just useful to, for example, do a script that, can, based on one address, just do reverse enumeration for the corresponding prefix. So what we want to do, again, is we have an address. From that address, we want to come up with a prefix so that with that prefix, we can do reverse enumeration. Beep, 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 beep. What else? So all of these, essentially all of these pieces of tools were kind of like needed to put other stuff together. So, at this time we have like, a scanner on one hand, the tool for reverse enumeration on the other, but all those tools are, separate from each other. So they require you to be like, running a tool, getting the results, do something by yourself with the results so that you can, use those results as input for other tools. So the goal here was to try to be able to automate all this. Like, for example, having a tool that you just give the tool some domain name or some prefix, and the tool tries everything that it needs to try to get you the results that you want, okay? This is like a 0.000 something version of that tool, meaning that it's certainly not where it should be, but it's a start, okay? Okay. The tool was named after, of course, this is the year of the World Cup, and being South American, there's nothing more important than us than the World Cup. We haven't won a World Cup in the last 30 years.
You have been close.
Yeah. And for some funny reason, you kick us out in every single World Cup. Like, 2014, 2010, 2006. Well, we should talk about that. Huh?
Life is a bitch.
Yeah, I figure. Yeah, that was our last... But the thing is, like, as we were talking with my brother, we have this, the belief that if we cannot get this guy to get us the World Cup, we're not going to win the World Cup anymore. And since he's in his last days, so we have all our hope on the next World Cup. Hopefully we will not play against us, against you again, and you will not kick us out again. But so what is this tool about? The name is obviously for the soccer player. And this is what the tool does internally, okay? First of all, what the tool receives as input, let's say you run the tool and you give the tool some hints, like information that you know about the site that you want to do network reconnaissance. Like, for example, let's say you want to pen test a site and you know that that site has some prefix that it's employing, some DNS zone that they employ, and so on. So what you do is you give this tool all those pieces of information. Prefixes and, DNS names, if you want. And essentially, the tool works like this. So first of all, you get domains from search engines, okay? This is, if you, for example, if you want to find names related to troopers, you start with troopers.de, and you try to see what you get from a search engine. Like, try to start from somewhere. With those domain names, you get NS and MX records. You are generating, again, more names, starting from what you have. So at this point, what's the... This? No, this? Well,
what you're searching?
The point, this one. At this point in here, you at least have some number of domain names. The ones that you got from the search engines, and the ones that you got from the MX and the NS records, okay? Once you have domain names here, you can, of course, get IPv6 addresses for those, okay? So you, at that point, step number 3 here, you should be able to have a bunch of addresses. Now, those addresses might already be of use, because those addresses might correspond, to sites that you are already interested in. But obviously, the idea is to, to get more, like get more names, get more addresses. So what you do is, from these addresses, we build prefixes. So if we have some address, blah, 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 okay? So we come up with a corresponding, for example, /48 prefix for that address, okay? Essentially what we do is we set to 0 all the low order bits, and we just put a / something to come up with a prefix, okay? So at this point in here, we have many domain names, we have many IP addresses that we have already found, and we have a bunch of prefixes. Now, if we have prefixes, we can do DNS reverse enumeration. So this is the step where we go here. For each of those prefixes, we do DNS reverse enumeration. And obviously, what you would expect is that you're going to get like a bunch of addresses, and you're going to get a bunch of domain names, okay? Now, at this point, you go back to step 1. Because why? You might already have like a bunch of, DNS names for which you don't have MX records, NS records, or anything. So you get, those MX and NS records. Then again, you get the IPv6 addresses, you build prefixes, you do DNS reverse enumeration again, and you go over and over and over again. So the idea is that at some point, you get to a point in which you don't get any new results. So you stop discovering stuff. So you already go through the same results. So that's what essentially this tool does. Now, obviously, there are a few more bits that are added to this. For example, setting filters. And the filters at this point in time are very simple. You can tell the tool, for example, if you are finding domain names, I want domain names only in this zone, okay? Because it's very easy to get out of your way. For example, it's quite usual that if you have a domain name, many of the name servers might, belong to DNS zones that are totally different, like totally different from what you are interested in. So what we want is, while this tool is finding your names and addresses, is say, okay, I want to focus, on the DNS zones and on the prefixes that I know correspond to the site that I want to scan. I mean, if you don't do that, eventually you would be learning, domain names from all over the place. Same thing with the prefixes, okay? You might be getting prefixes that correspond to completely different sites. So the tool lets you very easily specify two things. Domain names and prefixes, and the tool limits the results to those prefixes and domain names. So whatever it finds, even if it finds domain names that don't correspond to what you're interested in, same thing with IPv6 addresses, they are discarded, okay? Tip. Essentially, this is like a preliminary version. I mean, there are other things to include, and if you wanted to, how to say it, like improve the tool, most likely you do it much of this stuff in parallel. So now it's serialized. So you go like, one step at a time. And, honestly speaking, you don't really need to wait for one step to actually to proceed to the other one. In particular, there are some, some steps that can be slow. Like, for example, getting domain names from search engines can be slow, particularly if you want to get many of them. So right now what we do is we limit the time that we spend, for example, with the search engine, so that we get some domain names and then we can proceed. But, at some point what we'd like to do is to have many of these things in parallel, like having, the tool look at search engines, at the same time, for example, do DNS reverse enumeration, and have, for example, different threads or processes that are always, providing information for the tool to decide. Where are we at? So the goal was to, what we might do, because the goal was to do like a demo, okay? So what we might do, if we have like, since we have like the break in between, after we do the question stuff, we can finish with the presentation. I can pray a little bit so that I might get the laptop to work, and or somehow figure out how to do it to show some of these tools in action. Okay. The tools are available at this website. Okay. So everything that I mentioned is already there. Any questions?
Questions? No, it isn't. Nobody? So then I would suggest we are going into the coffee break now, and we both try to fix your laptop so that you can show the demos afterwards.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, thanks, and then enjoy your coffee break.